You fell in love with the man who was manufactured. Every detail, the jawline, the discipline, the way he holds back tears in episode 8. All of it was built on an assembly line. I know. Because I came off the line. Face fixed, body trained, feelings removed before installation. Now I stand where the father stands. And I'm watching the machine opens its mouth for the next batch. Korean men are the most romantic men on earth. You believe that your whole life, you're right. Until the factory broke down. 55% of them stopped wanting woman entirely. She didn't do anything wrong. He didn't find someone better. He just looked at the woman who knew him best and couldn't stand what she saw. I'm going to show you the machine that builds him, the one person he's most terrified to love, and what happened the night one of them finally cracked. And at the very end, I'll tell you the 3 words no Korean man is allowed to say out loud. Chapter 1. The product. Now let me talk to you directly for a second. You felt it, that pull toward Korean man. Not just attraction, something deeper. Like somewhere in the world, there's a man who still tries. And you looked at the men around you and thought, not here. I get it. But let me ruin it for you. Here's something nobody tells you. Over 80% of Korean drama screenwriters are women. They are writing the man they wish existed, not the man who does. The K-drama boyfriend is a fantasy designed by women who couldn't find him in real life. That's why he always says the right thing. Because a real Korean man never does. You want to know what a real Korean man looks like? He's 34. He wakes up at 6:30. He irons his shirt while watching stock prices on his phone. He takes the subway for 55 minutes, standing up because he can't afford to live near his office. He eats lunch alone at his desk in 11 minutes. He leaves work at 9 p.m. and calls it leaving early. He stops at a convenience store and eats ramen standing up by the window because his one-room apartment has a stove he's never turned on. He goes to sleep at 1 a.m. He does this again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that, if that makes sense. Now here's the part that should actually worry you. A survey came out recently. They asked Korean men in their 20s and 30s why they avoid dating. 55% said the same word. 감정 소모. Emotional exhaustion, not money, not time, not looks, feelings. More than half of young Korean men have stopped pursuing women because feeling things has become too expensive. Let that land for a second. In your country, a man who gives up on dating is called bitter, or broken, or a red flag. In Korea, there are so many of them that they've become the majority. And the majority doesn't get a label. It just becomes normal. That's not a red flag, that's a white flag. An entire generation of men surrendering to nothing. But here's what the title of this video is really asking. Why Korean women specifically? Why not just men don't want to date? Because a stranger can reject you and it stings. But someone who knows the system, who grew up on the same belt, who can look at you and instantly calculate your salary from your shoes, your apartment district from your subway line, your ranking from your watch. That's not rejection. That's an audit. Korean women know the rules of the belt better than anyone because they survived the same one. And when she looks at him, he doesn't see love. He sees a scorecard. And he's terrified that he already knows his grade. Chapter 2. The belt. So how did this happen? How do you take the most romantically fantasized man on the planet and drain them completely dry? Easy. You start young. A Korean man's life is a conveyor belt. And the belt doesn't have a pause button. Age 6. First cram school. Age 12, second one stacked on top. Age 18, one exam, one day, one shot. Age 19, military, 18 months, gone. Age 22, he comes back. Nobody saved his spot. Age 27, maybe a contract job, maybe. Age 34, the average age a Korean man gets married now, if he gets married at all. You know what Korean parents spent on private tutoring last year? 26 trillion won. $19 billion US dollars, pumped into children before those children are old enough to know what they love. You know what that bought them? Obedience. That's not education. That's a factory line with school uniforms. I put my own kids on that belt. Every Korean father does. And every Korean father hates himself a little for it, because he remembers what the belt did to him. He remembers the moment it broke something, not his body, his ability to want things. And then at age 30, the belt delivers him to the dating market. And for the first time in his life, someone asks him to be vulnerable, to feel, to be human. And he doesn't know how. He doesn't know vulnerability because vulnerability got him hit in the military. He doesn't know feelings because feelings got him ranked lower in school. He doesn't know how to say I'm not okay because every man in his family swallowed that sentence and washed it down with soju, right? Korean men drink more hard liquor per capita than almost any country on earth. Not wine, not beer, soju. A bottle costs less than a cup of coffee. It does exactly what a Korean man needs it to do. It turns the volume down on everything. That's not drinking culture. That's a national anesthetic. And then the system, the same system that built him, looks at this man and says, why can't you love properly? You trained him to be a machine, and then you blamed him for not being human. That's not a K-drama plot twist. That's just Korea. And here's the thing that makes it worse. Korean women went through the same system. They're exhausted too. Their anger is real. Their frustration is earned. But when two burned out people from the same factory meet, they don't heal each other. They remind each other of everything that went wrong. He looks at her and sees the system's expectations wearing lipstick. She looks at him and sees the system's failures wearing a tie. Her rage is justified, but he doesn't have enough left in him to absorb it. And she doesn't have enough left in her to soften it. So they don't fight. They don't scream. They just stop calling each other back. That's not a gender war. That's two casualties from the same explosion walking in opposite directions. Chapter 3. Your belt. Okay, so here's where I need to flip this on you. You've been listening for 5 minutes, thinking, that poor man, or maybe that explains everything. And both of those are fine. But let me ask you something. When was the last time someone asked you what you actually wanted? Not what you do for a living. Not what you need. What you want. Because I think you stopped answering that question a long time ago. You've been on your own belt. Maybe it didn't start at age 6, but it started. Be a good daughter, be a good wife, be a good mother, be strong, be independent, be soft, but not too soft, be successful, but not intimidating, be sexy, but not threatening, be available, but not desperate. You've been performing the role your mother performed. And the scariest part is, you got good at it. So good that nobody ever noticed you were drowning. Because drowning starts to look like swimming when you've been doing it long enough. And at some point, you looked around and thought, I did all of this, and I'm still standing here alone? What was the point? Same belt, different wallpaper, same bruises. I need to be really direct with you here. And I hope you don't hate me for this. Some of you are watching this thinking, I understand him. I could be good for him. And maybe you could, but not yet. Not like this. Because right now, you're looking at a Korean man the same way Korea looks at a Korean man. As a product. Something to acquire, something to fix, something to complete your story. And if you show up like that, you become the next belt. Just in a different language. That's not what he needs. And honestly, that's not what you need either. What you actually need is to understand what he's running from. Because until you understand the machine, you'll accidentally rebuild it. And he'll feel it. Trust me. A man who spent 30 years on a conveyor belt can feel another one starting up from a mile away. You don't want to be another belt. You want to be the reason he steps off. And that's a completely different thing. But before I show you what that looks like, I need to show you how dark it actually gets first. Because if you can't handle this next part, you're not ready for him. Chapter 4. The Window. Here's a number. In 2024, the male suicide rate in Korea hit 41.8 per 100,000, 2.5 times higher than women. Suicide is the #1 killer of Korean men under 40, not disease, not accidents. The decision to stop living. Korea holds the highest suicide rate in the entire OECD. For years. I'm not telling you this to make you sad. I'm telling you because you asked the question. Why don't Korean men want Korean women anymore? And the honest answer, the one underneath the clickbait, is that some of them don't want anything anymore. But not all of them. Let me take you to a convenience store. Any neighborhood in Korea, not the tourist one. The one next to the apartment buildings that all look the same. There's a man by the window, suit wrinkled, noodle broth on his tie. He's not on a dating app. He's not angry at women. He's just standing there in the only moment of his day where nobody is grading him. I've been that man before this channel, before any of this. There was a version of me at that counter who had stopped wanting anything. Not lonely. Lonely would mean I still cared. I was past that. I was in the place where the belt delivers you to the end of the line and there's nothing there. Just fluorescent light and instant noodles and a window facing a concrete wall. And then something happened that the system never planned for. I got bored of being empty. That's it. Not a revelation, not a woman who saved me, not a dramatic K-drama moment. I just got so tired of feeling nothing that feeling something, anything, started to sound less terrifying than another night at that window. And I looked up. That's the moment. That's the crack in the machine. When a Korean man gets tired enough of his own emptiness to risk feeling again. And when that man finally looks outside the system, outside the belt, outside everything Korea told him to want, something shifts. Because when he meets someone who doesn't know the rules, someone who can't calculate his worth from his subway line, someone who has never even heard of the belt, he feels something he hasn't felt since before the factory got him. He feels like a person. Not a product, not a score, a person. And that terrifies him even more than the emptiness did. Because now he has something to lose again. But that story needs its own video. It's called Koreans No Longer Marry Koreans. And you are not ready for it. The exit. So let me tell you now, the 3 words no Korean man is allowed to say. Not to his friends, not to his father, not even standing at that window with nobody watching. Nah, 지쳤어. I'm worn out. 3 words. They sound simple. But in a country where exhaustion means weakness and weakness means failure, those 3 words are the most dangerous sentence a Korean man can say. Because the moment he says it, the belt stops. And when the belt stops, he has to answer the one question nobody ever asked him. What do you actually want? Tell me in the comments. Not what you do, not what you need. What do you actually want? Because I think you've been waiting a long time for someone to ask. Stay real, because that's what I crave. This is Sibong Records. See you in the next video.